Thanks for joining me today for this all new season of Life with Lisa Bradshaw. To start off the season, I actually wanted to revisit with some folks that I met when I was on the first Don't Wait Project tour that was along the Northwestern states, and it includes a stop in Eugene, Oregon, when I met with Kathryn Dunn and her family, and she was very forthcoming and open about the struggles her family has faced with her oldest son, Jack's mental illness. It has been a couple of years since we talked, and a lot has happened over those couple of years for everyone watching and everyone that's participating in the interview today. But I just wanted to invite them back to talk about the progress they've made in their marriage, in their family, and some of the challenges they've faced with people outside of their family. And they've been able to use the lessons they've learned in their life with Jack and their life with other people as well. So we're talking now. Good morning, and thank you for being here, Brian and Kathryn from your lovely home in Oregon.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. So for people who don't recall our episode when we interviewed during the tour, if you just kind of give an update or bring us up to speed on what we shared and what you've been through in your marriage and the commitment that you've made, while also coming into this blended family with your oldest son being someone who suffers with mental illness.
Sure. So Brian and I were married in May of 2016, and he and his family was definitely aware of Jack's issues, which when we began dating were heating up pretty heavily. And Brian was an enormous support in helping us move forward. Jack has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar 1 and struggles mightily. He, at that point, gosh, I think he was homeless at the time that we filmed.
It's hard. He is how old now?
He is 24.
24. And when we talked earlier, you shared that from a very young age, he was difficult to manage as a young child, that you couldn't have known what was stirring inside, but that it's always been a struggle, and the struggle had heightened at this point about the time that the two of you married. And Brian, I remember you sharing something about how just being firm and strong in your support of Kathryn, but also saying something to the fact that, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you. What was your stance then, and how has it worked over the last 5 years of your marriage?
I guess my stance back then was just trying to understand where our relationship was going to go with this, and I guess how we were going to grow together. And I think it's gone pretty well since then. I mean, there's been difficult times for sure, but we've grown tremendously.
Mm-hmm. And you have other children who we'll talk with, your youngest son, Tom, Kathryn, in just a little bit. And he was someone, we invited him to talk a couple of years ago, and he wasn't interested in sharing any of his experience at that point. And he is now. So we thank him for being willing to do that. And we'll also follow up with Lila and your daughter, who has gone off to college now and has had some experiences that what she learned from Jack helped her cope in her new adult life. And you also, Brian, have children. So
Yep.
you all come together and appear to be super solid. So the reason why I wanted to have you is mental illness is something that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about. You've been very honest and forthcoming, Kathryn, about your experience. And it's also something that people are dealing with quite mightily right now with the social distancing and the isolation and the stress and everything that's come with COVID. Yeah. What have you seen, or what advice would you give, or how would you glean from your experience? What have you learned from the process over the last several years, especially since he's an adult and not in your home, and you don't know from one day to the next if he's safe or even has shelter?
Yeah. Advice for people during this time that gets so stressful and is so strange. We're all hampered by these different entities and different situations. One thing I had to learn is I'm a planner, so I had to learn to roll with it. And I've had to learn to roll with a lot of things, and just having kids and that having to learn to roll with those things. But I had to learn to manage very, very difficult situations that came up like that. Everything could be fine. 10 minutes later, we have a meltdown for some reason. So
what would be, explain maybe for people what a meltdown would look like. What's an example of a meltdown that you would face with Jack?
sure. You know, any kid can't find something that needs to go in their backpack. They can't find both soccer shoes, Lila. And for a normal kid and a normal parent, you're frustrated, you're cranky, you're kind of, you know, snipping at each other. Hurry up, let's go, Mom, I can't find it. But you find the shoe, you get in the car. If that's Jack, it's almost like the hamster wheel would go from general agitated to just one long spin that was not going to stop, and he would get angry, not get in the car, leave. One of those lamps back there is dented. He might try to break something or just take off and screaming. He might push somebody, a lot of name calling. It was terrible. So trying to figure out how to find a soccer shoe or find the thing that goes in the backpack took a lot of very quick, careful planning to try to keep the level of anxiety, you know, here, as opposed to blowing the roof off.
And he's been out of your home for several years now. And he is how old now?
24.
24. And at this point, I remember you shared how on a Valentine's Day, you wouldn't give him money, but you brought him chocolates. You know, you went to find him and share that with him. Is he in a better place right now than when we saw you last? Is he homeless right now, or does that change from day to day? How do you even know his status? Does he share that with you?
Well, since we talked, he had a stint in the Oregon State Mental Hospital up in Salem and was there, oh gosh, 6-8 months.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 6 months.
And that he was there on an aid and assist, which is a legal term to get him to his court date. Nothing, just when you sleep in the park enough times and get arrested for small time things enough times, you end up in court, you miss your court dates. So they had him there, got him stabilized on meds. He was out about 1.5 years and stayed on a 30-day shot instead of daily pills. And it worked pretty well until he stopped taking the shot. He's been off the shot since April and kind of stepping down back into the rabbit hole mentally. And he's been on and off since September or October, downtown for a while. But he does have a place to live in Cresswell, which is a small town just south of Eugene, just a few minutes away, and has a wonderful roommate who has taken more care of him. He's been a better friend and practically a family member to Jack than anybody has been. And it's not a great situation out in Cresswell. The house doesn't have any water or electricity right now, but it's a roof. And but Jack will go downtown. He'll hitchhike into town. So I text with Paul now and then, and
The roommate.
there he is, the roommate, yes. And it's hit or miss right now, so we don't know. We're kind of in that weird time when he typically takes steps down and will end up homeless for some chunk of time. So we don't know.
Yeah, and I think some of the difficulty there is when he does kind of go back and end up, in the homeless phase. I think watching you, the difficulty is knowing where he is. Where is he? What is he up to? How is he doing? I haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. Checking to see if has he been arrested. That's kind of the difficulty. And I think thinking about kind of that support structure that you have, it is kind of a small community, small town, Eugene being what it is, and knowing enough people in the community that, have you seen Jack? And people kind of pay attention to what's going on downtown, and you kind of know where the places are where typically some of the homeless populations might be, and so you keep your eye out to see Jack, and you do get those phone calls on occasion to say, hey, I've seen Jack, he looks like he's okay, he's and so getting some of those updates are really helpful too, especially at the times where you just don't hear from him at all, and you don't know what status is. And I also wanted to say something else, thinking about the holiday time frames, and you talked about planning and being a planner. I think it's helped, being able to understand the situation in the sense that we have family dinners, or we have family get-togethers for around the holidays and stuff, and knowing that Jack's not going to be able to participate, or there are times when he has. There have actually been situations where he's been healthy enough and been on his medications that he's been able to participate, and that's been really nice to have him here. But then there's other times when we know like he's not going to be able to be here. Those are difficult for Kathryn. I think that's some of the difficulties that we struggle with.
And one of the things that the part of wanting to have you back is that I wanted people to see, even if they didn't see the original episode, just to gather from our conversation that it's difficult, it's painful, just as it brings you to tears now. But your life that you share, Brian and Kathryn, and the children that you share, even the children outside of Jack, and the consistency that you have, the kids are going to come home, the kids are going to check in, the kids are okay. You've managed to create a really solid environment for everyone else, and including yourselves. And I would think that would be about the most difficult thing for any mother or father, to lay their head down at night and not know where their child is and if he or she is okay. So I just commend you for having the strength, and Brian, you supporting her in that strength to make sure you're looking out for your kids, the other kids, and that they're okay. And that's why I wanted to talk with Lila and Tom again today too, because it is really something to see, just that you've managed to create happiness with this gut-wrenching pain that you'll carry all of your life. So I wanted people to see your example and know that you can still have a healthy, thriving family, and know that part of it may always be broken.
That's the biggest takeaway for me personally, and I think that Brian and I do that together as well, and I'll sort of speak for him, but if you don't pay attention to all the great things around you, you're wasting your time. You have to take the pain for what it is and feel it, and don't ignore it. There's no sense in ignoring it, but you can't live in it. You can't just sit there. If you fall in a puddle, you're not going to stay there. You're going to get out. You're going to change your clothes and put on some dry clothes and sit by the fire. So that's what we do. We have a wonderful life. We have great jobs. We have wonderful kids. We have spectacular friends. We have a fantastic life. So we're not going to go not live it because one person can't always be there with us. So.
Well, thank you both for coming on again and sharing your story with us. When we come back, we'll talk with Tom, your youngest son, and just get his side of things. And also, I think Lila has some things to share that will teach us all some really valuable lessons. So we'll take a break and be back in just a moment. We're back talking with a special family in Oregon who's willing to share their story, how they've coped over the years, many years. We talked with Kathryn and Brian earlier about Kathryn's oldest son, Jack, who has mental illness and has spent much of his adult life homeless, and they've learned to cope and still raise and thrive in a strong family. And now talking with Tom. Thanks for being here, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
When we met you in Oregon, or talked with your mom and sister and Brian in Oregon a couple of years ago, you weren't so interested in having this chat. So thanks for being willing to share. What has changed for you to be willing to talk about your brother and how those feelings and have affected you over the years?
I think I've just gotten a lot of time to think about it, and I don't think I've grown too much, but my parents, they let me know I've been growing a lot, and I think I can see that now.
Well, and sometimes we can't see it in ourselves, right? People see it outside of ourselves. You've struggled over the years. You've had a hard time with your older brother having the outburst that your mom described, but also just have his absence. You've missed him. What is it like for you as the younger brother who just, aside from everything else that he may have put your family through and experienced himself, what is it like for you to just miss him in your family?
There's a part of me that just really doesn't miss him, but like knowing that he's family just makes me like want him here. But I mean, in the big picture, I think I could definitely live without him, honestly.
Because of the struggles that you faced when he's around, because it made everything harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to miss him would be missing something you really, really didn't have in him, in your brother. Yeah. So your mom shared with me that you wrote a poem a couple of years ago about your brother, and you were willing to share that with us. So would you mind reading that for us?
Yes. Good. What's the pin?
4803.
Okay. So this poem is called Hurt, and I wrote this 2 years ago in my 10th grade English class. So here it is. My brother's mind was absent. He was gone, not even a fragment. After my parents' detachment, he turned completely savage. He turned angry. I was being attacked by the brother I used to know. I felt like a small bird in a big plateau being chased and harassed by a big buffalo. Endless nights of him smoking his tobacco and drinking made him angry at us, hitting and smashing things without wishful thinking. Did you hear that? It's the doorbell ringing. It was the police. We can rest easy in peace, knowing that the screaming will cease. His mind will never release the virus that made him screech. And that's it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being a voice for other young men your age who suffered with a sibling with mental illness. You okay there?
Yeah, that was good just deciding to talk.
Well, thank you. And when we come back, we're going to talk with your sister, Lila, and share more of your family story. Thanks so much, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're back talking with Lila now. She shared with us very openly a couple of years ago just how sometimes, Lila, thanks for being here. You shared sometimes how it was just difficult for you to find your place in the family, and you and your mom worked through those things together, and you're a strong young woman attending college. And one thing that I wanted to share that your mom had shared with me is that you ended up with someone living in your building at college who was most obviously severely mentally ill. And I wanted to have you share a bit about that, because you probably showed up more equipped than most people would have, because it was familiar for you. So welcome back to the show, and congratulations on all your achievements at school. And tell us now a little bit about your life there and the person you encountered.
Yeah, so I currently go to school in Montana at Montana State University. Go Bobcats. So over the summer, I ended up living off campus, subletting a room from a girl I went to school with. And it was the first week there. We ended up having to call the police on our upstairs neighbor. He lived right above us. And I immediately could tell that he was extremely similar to Jack in like the way he had his outbursts and what I could hear from him pacing up and down the stairs around his living room, because his bedroom was right above where mine was, so I could hear everything. Yeah, so my roommates were like, yeah, that's been happening for like past 6 months here, and it's terrifying. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I have experienced what seems like my entire childhood. So we are safe. We're in our own little bubble. As long as we don't like interact with him during his outbursts, we are completely safe. But yeah.
So when you were able to give this advice to your friends who've been living with this long before you moved in, did it give them a sense of peace or a little bit of control in their own environment to know that they were safe as long as they just stayed back and didn't try to intervene in any kind of way at all?
Yeah, it did comfort them a little bit. They're like, yeah, we always thought he was going to break into the house or whatever. I'm like, as long as you don't talk to him, you're safe. But we did end up having to call police on him a number of times for his own safety. So every time we had to do that, they had me do it because I was able to better explain what was happening. And yeah.
I think it's a lot like perhaps patient advocacy, and you have a language that you can use, and you have a communication with police officers, things you probably overheard your mom say over the years, or things that you recognized in Jack that you also now recognized in the person who lived above you. That's one of the reasons I wanted you to share this, because, you know, growing up, it was probably super terrifying and then incredibly frustrating. And then you're just over it. Like, can he just not be here anymore? I remember you sharing a bit about that. But here you've learned these lessons that right away in your new adult life on your own, you're facing and able to glean some of the lesson from what Jack has taught you. What would you say, we just have about a minute left, what would you say is the biggest lesson that now that you're out on your own, Jack has taught you, and the experience of living with and without Jack has taught you?
Patience. You have absolutely no idea what's going on in somebody else's life, and you got to give people patience. Like, you have to have patience. You have to give people grace, the benefit of the doubt. You just can't assume what's going on in their lives. Like, I don't know what's going on in Jack's life right now, so yeah. But patience is the big thing.
And with the man who lived upstairs, having that experience, was he able to get the help, or was it just, did you see light at the end of the tunnel for him, or were you just trying to keep yourself safe and not have to deal with his business, but at least call when there were outbursts that were interfering with your even ability to concentrate to study, for example?
I don't know what happened to him. I know the last time we did have to call the cops, he was taken to the hospital. But as far as I know, he's out living his own life in the world.
And you feel good about where you're at in your life and your family? One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is, as I said in both segments, that your parents have managed to create this really strong foundation for you. And you feel solid? You feel like you've learned a lot and you're strong in your adult life?
Yeah, I feel I'm pretty well equipped to be out on my own. Thanks, Mom.
Well, thank you so much, Lila, for being here and just, letting people know that you can go out and have this wonderful life, no matter the things that you've dealt with. And if you guys all stick together, everything will be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck. I can't wait to hear about you graduating and what you do next.
Thank you.
Do you want to become part of the most dependable brand of vehicles today? Then start looking at Town Toyota. Come drive the best-selling, totally redesigned 2019 RAV4. Come check out the powerful towing performance of the Tundra. It's built for the worksite and the weekend. Forge your own path and seek tougher roads in the Tacoma. Leave no trail left unchallenged. Whatever your vehicle needs, Toyota has a seat for you. Come visit us today.